Hello everyone and welcome back again to Fly From Home. Internet cat enthusiast here with another quick-ish review flight, similar to what we did with the Marchetti last time out. But this time we've got this rather lovely looking Boeing 247D by Wing 42. Now a quick note of thanks before we get on with the review itself. This was actually bought for us by one of the members of our Discord, Richard. So thank you very much, Richard. I'll certainly try to do it justice today. I've been doing a couple of practice flights yesterday to try and get the hang of this thing, because as you will see, this is a very, very complicated aeroplane. But we'll have a quick look around the outside first of all. So the texture and the modelling job is pretty great on the outside. It's certainly a nice looking aeroplane. It's got that kind of semi-matte finish, and you can see like little blemishes and stuff on the skin of the aircraft, which is very, very cool. There's a bunch of different suitable retro liveries for the aircraft that come with it, and this is my favourite, blue and white. As anybody who follows these videos know, I'm always a sucker for blue and white liveries, so this one looks very, very nice. United Airlines, and the tail number on the back there. Brief note about the 247. It was one of the first proper, I guess, airliners in aviation history. It's from the 1920s, made obviously by the Boeing company in the United States. Yeah, not too much more to say about it really. The history of the aircraft, it's a very significant aircraft in the history of passenger transports. Retractable landing gear, constant speed propellers, all these kind of modern features that you wouldn't see on even military aircraft at the time. So very, very cool to have all of that stuff in Microsoft Flight Simulator. Pop inside. Oh, get rid of that for now. And the cockpit the panel is certainly pretty nice. It's not the best texture job I've ever seen in my life. I mean, if we were looking at this airplane as an add-on for P3D, we'd probably say yes, this is an extremely good job modelling the textures and the cabin and all the rest of it. But unfortunately, Microsoft Flight Simulator has set such an incredibly high standard that this is a little on the underwhelming side. But you've got to consider that this thing costs £16, again about $20 in the Microsoft store, so it's incredibly cheap. So honestly, the job that they've done with it is pretty fantastic for the money. And also, if you're looking at the visuals on this aeroplane, that's really not what it's all about. This aeroplane is all about the modelling of the flight dynamics and especially the engines. The team behind this aircraft have gone to incredible amounts of effort to model the radial engines as realistically as possible. So what you're looking at here is something along the same sort of lines as the PMDG DC-6 in terms of how realistically they've gone to the trouble of modelling the engines. So as far as I'm concerned, that's pretty great. Right, so what we've got for you today is a flight using real-world weather. Believe it or not, this is real-world weather today in the UK. Can you believe it? I'm down in Bournemouth at Bournemouth International Airport, Herne, Echo Golf Hotel, and we're going to be nipping across the English Channel to the island of Jersey, which is, for those of you out of the loop, a very nice sunny part of the UK. It's probably the only warm, sunny part of the UK more often than not. Although they do get some pretty terrible weather down there, so I don't know. It's the UK, so what can you say? We're going to be nipping over to Jersey. We're going to be navigating. I mean, I'll talk a little bit about the navigation system on this airplane. We're not going to be using that. I'm just going to be cheating with the GPS because stuff it. But yes, we're going to be navigating with a little bit of GPS and cheating a little bit, and just basically going in a straight line, pretty much VFR, all the way over there, lining up for a visual approach and landing, and trying not to light ourselves on fire in the process. But first of all, we'll get our aeroplane set up. So we've got this little clipboard thing here, which is how you control all the different bits and pieces on the aeroplane in terms of the setup and the loading and all that kind of stuff, maintenance. There's a bit of useful speeds and procedures on this page. This one is your weight and balance. So you can see at the moment we've got 3 crew on board, 1 cabin crew and 2 sitting at the front. Yes, 2 sitting at the front. There is no flight engineer on this aircraft, which will give you a clue as to how hard we're going to have to work on this flight. Let's say we're going to take a full complement of passengers. So let's fill her up. Fuel, we've got enough fuel. You can see there's a little bit of fuel out of the left tank here. This is from me flying the airplane about yesterday. It does remember configuration and fuel and oil levels and things like that from flight to flight, which is great in one sense, but also in another sense, I managed to get the airplane in a state where it just wouldn't start its engines, and I had to go off and delete all the data that it saves in the root file. So can be a little bit of a bug at times, but for the most part, yeah, pretty great. I'm going to put a little bit of baggage in the front and rear as well, just to add a bit of realism. And then we hit the Make It So button in the words of Captain Picard, and then these chaps come out and do the stuff, I guess. You can see all of these custom-made little airport vehicles. I mean, that looks like it's got bicycle wheels on it. All moving around the aircraft. Unfortunately, you don't see these chaps themselves, but you have these extremely cool-looking dudes doing all the tasks, ground crew tasks, dispatcher tasks around the aircraft. He looks far too cheerful to be a ramp agent, to be honest. Okay, so while they're doing that, we're going to pop over to the next page. Get onto this in a second. Maintenance. So this is options on the maintenance side of things. We can remove bits of the engine and remove the cowling and all that kind of stuff. Open the battery compartment, gear fairing. I'm not going to bother doing that just now, but I'm sure you've seen it on other videos if you're that interested in this aircraft. Oil system. Now, this is very important. You can actually pick what grade of oil you're going to fill your aeroplane up with. Now, this depends on the temperature that you're operating in, and because it's a US aircraft, of course, everything is in Fahrenheit. I've gone for the SAE 20W for 15 to 50 Fahrenheit. Given that today's outside air temperature is, well, actually, it's a little bit warmer than that. So maybe we should go for an oil change to the SAE 30 from 20 to 95. So let's do that then, shall we? So we'll hit oil change. And we'll go to SAE 30. Now, you can mix the grades, so we could top it up. So we could just top it up with this oil and mix them together, which is apparently something that actually does help the aeroplane. I was always taught never ever mix grades of oil, but I don't know, things are different in the 20s. But yes, we're going to go for 30 and hit OK on that. We are going to do an oil change. Just swap it out. So we'll cue all that up, and this chap with a flat cap, who definitely has a Brooklyn accent in real life, is doing all of those various jobs, draining the tank, and you'll see things like opening the oil tank and things like that. Radio equipment. So this is a brief primer on using this thing. It kind of makes Morse noises depending on where you are relative to a radio beacon on the ground. I mean, that's way beyond my understanding and ability. I am just a pilot in current year, and as any old pilot will tell you, modern pilots are all stupid. So that's way beyond me. We're just going to be cheating with the old GTN 750. Maybe I'll get my head around that at some point and show you how that works. But in terms of what we're going to be doing today, that's a little bit over the top. We're trying to keep it short and sweet. You can see the oil tanks are filling up on here. Fuel were good. So we're going to be ready to start fairly soon. So I'm going to pop the parking brake on, just as an added bit of security. We do have chocks inserted at the moment, but we'll pressurise the brakes. And pop the master battery on. And as you can hear no gyros or anything spinning up, because as far as I can tell, there is no electrical gyro system on this aircraft at all. Props full forwards, prop levers are these ones on the side here, mixtures, so we'll put the mixture up on the left engine, which is one we're going to start first. Crack the throttle open a bit. I'll go on to a little bit more about what the rest of these levers do as we get a little bit more into this. I'm just going to make sure I'm doing all of these things right. Okay, so we're going to start her up on, we'll start her up on the low tank, which is going to be the left main one. But for some reason it has one big tank in the left, and a little tank on the right, and an extra little tank on the right, which I'm sure it made sense at the time. We're going to turn both of the fuel feeds on, carburetor fuel feeds, turn the ignition on, and we're going to go for the mags on as well. Now I'm going to be very carefully put the navigation lights on. Now this is something... That's a very loud AI A320 going past us there. The lights are absolutely fantastic on this airplane. You can see like individual elements and the reflection, all the rest of it. It's really, really good. It's such a huge difference to the Marchetti that I reviewed last time, which basically had lights from FS 2004. This really does look the part in the simulator, so they've done a great job with the lights. Okay, so that's on. Ignition's on, fuel's on. Now we better prime it, so we're going to select the primer to the left, open the primer valve, and we'll give it 1, 2, 3 primes, then we'll close the valve, close that, and we should be ready to start. So put seatbelts and no smoking on, tell the passengers to sit down. Now what we need to do with this airplane, so this airplane doesn't have an electric starter or a cartridge starter or any kind of thing to actually start the engines up internally. To save weight, it has an inertial flywheel that needs to be cranked up manually before every engine start. And we can see the handle's been inserted in the side of the engine, and we're going to ask our lovely ground crew man to start cranking it over. And once we hear that the flywheel's basically at its highest RPM, then we can go for the start. But what we've got to do first is get some fuel pressure. So we've got a wobble pump here. I'm going to crank the fuel pressure up, and then we pray to the gods and hope it starts. There we go. We have liftoff. RPM is here, so I'm just going to give it a little RPM, try and get it up to 1,000, which seems to me like a reasonable ground idle, just to try and start getting some temperature in the oil, which is very, very important as far as engine management is concerned. And I'm going to pull the ladder up for the right-hand side. Begin the starting process on that. Sounds in the cockpit are not amazing, but outside I think are absolutely fantastic. Okay, ladder's attached. Let's put this crank on. Now I don't know if this is a bug or intentional, but as far as I can tell, there's no sounds for the flywheel on the right engine, unlike the left one. Which is a bit sad because that flywheel noise is very cool. Right, while he's doing that, let's do the prime. So we're going to select right engine, turn the valve on, and we'll go 1, 2, 3 with the primer pump. Off on the valve, back to the middle. Shove the mixture forward. Turn the mags on. Crack the throttle. And give it some wobble. And measure. There we go. The engine definitely makes a noise, but the starter doesn't. So that's a good start on the right engine. And again, as the engines get warm, the RPM will creep up. That's exactly the same as the DC-6. So it simulates that. And, you know, every real aeroplane that I've flown, carburetted aeroplane, will do that kind of thing. We can see the gyros starting to right themselves now as they're getting vacuum from the vacuum pumps. You can see the oil temperature on the left engine's getting a little bit warm, so I'm going to open the oil shutters on that side, just while we're messing around on the ground. Now, there's no cowl flaps on this aircraft. All you have are oil shutters, which are internal things that control oil flowing around the inside of the engine. So open them up, things get cooler, close them up, things get warmer. Simple as. I'm going to pull out the wheel chocks, because we're pretty much good to go. Let's do a quick check of the weather on the ground here in Bournemouth. I'll pop the radio switch on. You've got to be very, very careful not to overload the electrical system of the aeroplane, because otherwise it burns one of its fuses out. So you've got to be careful not to turn too much electrical stuff on at the same time. Let's just pretend we've got a handheld GPS with us here in the cockpit today. I mean, to be fair, you would almost certainly be flying with one of these things. If you were flying one of these airplanes in real life, you'd have a little handheld GPS on you just to help matters. Let's see. Airports. So 1028, which we've already got set, reading roughly 30 feet on the altimeter, which is airfield elevation. Wind is 180 degrees. Cool beans. And we've got 26 or 08. So it's coming from the south. I guess 26 is probably the runway in use. I'll just double check. Okay, latest METAR at Bournemouth says that runway 08 is in use. So let's have a quick look at our routing. We're just going to take off. We're going to route basically in a straight line. I know it's routed as via AUTAC here, but obviously we're not going to bother too much about that. We're just going to follow the rough line on track to Jersey. I'm going to put that in our little GPS system, just so we've got a rough idea of where to go. Oil temps are getting a bit warm, so I'm going to open both of those. It's runway 08, so let's taxi over there. So I'm going to reduce power a bit, but not too much, because if you close the throttles too much, the engines will just stop. I'm going to hold the brakes on my feet, release the parking brakes, and away we go. Now, one thing to note when you're taxiing this aeroplane, it has no tailwheel steering. Okay, that's better. Don't mind me. Now, it's obviously very tricky to taxi any tail dragger, but I've found that if you hike yourself up in your seat a little bit, you can kind of see out well enough to do the usual S-turn weavy taxi. In terms of actually flying this aeroplane, it's incredibly smooth and stable and benign. There are no flaps, really, because you don't need flaps on an aeroplane like this. Its aerodynamics are so good at low speed that it basically just floats around. It's a bit like a really, really big tiger moth. That said, it's a lot more tricky to taxi than it is to fly. As you can see, I'm having a little bit of trouble keeping it straight. The trick with castering tail wheels is to remember that there is no direct connection between the rudder pedals and the tail wheel. So all of your correction is pretty much being done by the brakes until you have enough forward airspeed for the rudder to become effective. So you're using a lot of differential braking. And remember, when the aircraft's set up in a turn, you're going to need opposite rudder to stop it from turning. If you get what I mean. Okay, we're going to take this intersection here because we absolutely don't need full length. The runway at Bournemouth isn't enormously long, but it's certainly far too long for this little aeroplane here, as you will see in a moment. Now, apparently the takeoff technique, as referenced by the manual that comes with the aeroplane, there is some pretty good documentation that comes with this thing, by the way. There has to be. The correct technique for takeoff is to apply some back pressure to the yoke, apply some power, and just go for it. So we're on the runway. Let's pop our landing lights on. I mean, we don't have a transponder. Piso heat we're not going to use because it's going to overload the electrical system. Lights are on. All right, let's do it. Going to go for 36 inches of manifold pressure, which is referenced by the border between the white and the red on that gauge there. Power's set. Let's keep that back pressure on. Looking for airspeed down here. And away she goes, easy as that. Beautiful. Lots of right pedal required. Bit of nose up trim. Realise I completely forgot to align our DG. We've got about 260. In fact, that's completely wrong. It should be about here. So that's runway heading. We'll leave that for now. See if we can get that to settle itself out. Okay, I'm going to pop the radios off. In fact, I'm going to pop the landing lights off, then I'm going to pop the radio master off, and then I'm going to raise the landing gear to try and stop it from blowing a fuse. And then I'm going to start our left turn out towards the ocean. We see there's a big undercarriage position indicator there. Gear up, lights out. Okay, so you can pop the radio back on now. Okay, so I'm going to set climb power now. About 32 inches manifold pressure, 2200 RPM. RPM gauge is down here. When I've got one manifold pressure gauge, it can read from left or the right engine. I've just got it set to the left engine at the moment. Okay, I'm going to accelerate to about sort of 110 knots for the climb. Rate of climb is really quite good, as you can see by the vertical speed indicator there. It's not the fastest aeroplane in the world, but it definitely does climb very well. Okay, gears up, flaps we don't have, lights are off, engine T's and P's, oil temperature is coming down nicely, pressure's looking good. I'm going to start closing those oil shutters now. As the higher we go and the colder we get and the faster our airspeeds, the more trouble we're going to have maintaining oil temperature. The goal is to keep enough temperature in the oil to stop it from getting too cold and damaging the internals, and also stop it getting so hot that it thins out and then you lose all your oil pressure. Something else we want to be looking at is our inlet air temperature. So we're outside of conditions where we might be getting carb ice, but if we do enter into a cloud or anything like that, we need to be putting our carb heats on to keep it about 100 Fahrenheit on this. So this little gauge, this little instrument here, reads from the cylinder head temperature of the number 1 cylinder, cylinder head temperature of the number 4 cylinder, and carb air inlet temperature. And that's for the left engine, and then over the other side it's the right engine. No autopilot on this aeroplane, so you're going to have to put up with my rubbish flying all the way there. But as I was saying, on the ground it flies really nice and stable. They've done a fantastic job of replicating an aeroplane which I suspect probably felt very heavy, very stable in real life. That's exactly what it feels like in the sim. It's really nice. It requires quite a lot of rudder input, as I suspect is typical of an aircraft of this era. So you'll find yourself on the pedals quite a lot, using your rudder trim as well. Keep forgetting to keep bumping the manifold pressure forward as we climb. Okay, we're going to go up to 6,000 feet, I think. It's a reasonable altitude, just going to give us above this little cloud bank here. Hope it's not going to be too hard to find a cloud break when we get closer to Jersey, but we'll cross that bridge when we come to it. Surprisingly low nose attitude required for straight and level. And we're speeding up nicely now, so I'm going to pull back to about 30 inches of manifold pressure and go for about 2,000 RPM. Also going to bring the mixture levers back as well. Really need to pay more attention to my flying, but unfortunately, with all the gauges being in the middle there, it's really hard to do any kind of useful instrument scan. When you're concentrating down on the gauges down here, it's really hard to fly with visual references. I mean, getting it trimmed out probably would help, but I mean, I never said I was actually a good pilot. Now, I see our oil temperatures are actually getting quite low, so I'm just going to bang on the carb heat to try and keep some temperature in the oil. I'm also going to lean the mixture out a little bit more, try and get the mixture quite lean, because that will help keep some temperature in the engines too. Outside air temperature is about sort of 35 or so Fahrenheit. Isle of Wight just behind our left wing there, leaving the southern coast of the UK, or of the mainland UK behind, because of course the Channel Islands are sort of technically part of the UK. States of Jersey, states of Guernsey, they're sort of semi-autonomous, but they are still under the yoke of the British Empire. One day I will get this thing trimmed out. Yeah, the lack of an autopilot really isn't too much of a bother. It'd be nice while you're messing around with other stuff in the cockpit to have something that could just hold straight and level, but honestly, it's a real joy to hand fly. I keep having to remind myself that this thing costs 16 quid. It costs the same price as that very basic, very bug-filled Marquesi that I reviewed last week, which is just incredible, really. I think this has to be one of the best value add-ons in the sim. Kind of spoiled my my conclusion there, but there you have it. So, little update for you. I'm still really struggling to get any temperature in the oil. I think this is probably to do with the oil that we put in at the start. Maybe we should have mixed the grades or something, I'm not sure. But yeah, it's struggling to get it above 40 degrees Fahrenheit at the moment, and as a result our oil pressures are very high. Now, I'm not sure about these engines, but generally high oil pressure isn't a huge issue for most aero engines. It just means you'll have high oil consumption. The issue is that if we operate the engines at too high a power setting, they're going to damage themselves. So I really hope that that's not what's happening right now, but hey ho, I also keep drifting off track. I'm trying to maintain. About a sort of 190 heading. Sort of considering maybe trying to crank the RPM up a little bit to work the engines a little bit harder and try and keep a little bit more temperature in the oil. But if you start turning the engines faster, there's higher RPM, there's more of a chance that they're going to damage themselves because of low oil temperature. So I think I'm going to keep it where it is for now. I've leaned out as much as I dare. Carb heats are on full. And the oil shutters are fully closed. So there's not much more I can do, really, other than descend to a lower altitude, which, I mean, we could do, but we're just coming up on this this cloud bank here, so I don't really want to be descending through it. Something you can do in this plane, which I find really cool, is you can actually click on all the gauges and give them a tap to try and wake them up a bit if you're getting a slightly odd reading off one of them, which is very cool. Now you may be wondering, the more observant of you, why our fuel gauges read 0. Well, that's because to actually get them to read, you have to pull these out. And as you can see, yeah, we probably should be changing tanks, so let's put our switch over to the right tank now. We've burned enough out of the left. Okay, we're about sort of halfway across the channel now, and as you can see, it's pretty much broken cloud below us right now. So I'm going to have to pick a hole in this and try and descend us through it. That one looks pretty promising, so we're going to go for that. Keep the engines set pretty much where they are. In fact, well, I'll reduce power a tiny bit. Give it a bit of mixture. Generally, radial engines don't like to be descended at idle, so that's not what I'm going to do. I'm going to come down to maybe 3,000-4,000 feet, whatever it takes to get below this cloud. Because at least then we'll it'll be a little bit warmer. We'll have an easier time of keeping our temperatures in. I'm going to put the pitot heater on now, so hopefully that's not going to blow the fuses. To pull the power back now, because otherwise we're going to be going way too fast. Hopefully our passengers back there aren't averse to a slightly sporty rate of descent. I'd hate for our lone cabin crew back there to be having to deal with a bunch of burst eardrums. So despite low power setting, our temps are thankfully coming up now, so happy days. And of course I've managed to fly us into a cloud. Are you kidding me? How low is this cloud base? Let me check the weather at Jersey, jeez. Few clouds at 1,900 on the MESAR right now, so we may have to come down to below 2,000 feet to get below this stuff. I'm really not happy with going below 2,000 feet here. You can see we're still not really below the majority of the clouds. Let's level off here. Temperatures have recovered a little bit happier about that. Island you can see just below the cloud on the right hand side of the aircraft is Alderney. So apparently runway 08 is in use at Jersey. Now normally I'd try to put us out to the west of the islands, coming in over the sea. But if the cloud is this bad all the way over there, I'm going to probably have to put us in the overhead of the airport, do a circling descent down, and then basically try to fly a visual circuit, which is going to be fun, I guess. Obviously we don't have any capacity to do an instrument approach with this aircraft, so... So our MSA over the top of Jersey should be about 1,300 feet. So worst case scenario, we'll get in the overhead and just circle down to 1,300 and hope we break cloud. On the plus side, the temperatures are coming up. Some pretty big gaps in the cloud over towards France over there. You can actually see the French coast in the distance. So hopefully this stuff breaks up a little bit more the closer we get to Jersey. Oh, well that looks hopeful. Okay, so the island we can see in the distance just there is Jersey, and it looks to be free of clouds, so that's a huge relief. If we've got enough spacing, we are going to try to fly off to the west a little bit. That all depends on how much cloud there is out to the west. It's far too stressful. I thought it was just going to be a nice, leisurely VFR flight. See, we've crept up to almost 4,500 feet, just so I was trying to keep clear of the cloud there. Don't want to get too high because obviously we have to descend all that off again. And descending at low power setting is obviously not going to be great for our oil temperatures. Just going to start trying to descend again and position ourselves somewhere out here for what will kind of be a left base joint to runway 08 at Jersey. Okay, we'll do our free joining checks. So fuel, let's check our fuel levels. So still got plenty in that that little right tank, and a little bit less in the left. So we'll stay on the right tank for now. Mixtures are full rich. Just about to see the airfield, just over there. Seatbelt signs are on. Let's pop our landing lights on. Keep descending to about 1,500 feet because that's the ILS top of drop, so that should put us in a ballpark for being at the right height to start an approach. There's a ship down there. Pretty cool to see. Okay, let's put the pitot heater off now, try and reduce some electrical load. Start the turn. Okay, let's pop the radio off. Select gear down. Start adding some power in now because it's the gear does provide a lot of drag. Having to add a lot of nose up trim now as well. Okay, the final approach track's established. Put the radio back on again now. Gear down 3 green. Or rather indicating down. Okay, reds, blues and greens. Going to turn the carb heats off now. Temperatures are coming up. Keep an eye on those because we're going to have to open the oil shutters at some point. You can hear all the buffeting and stuff. That's a lot of that's caused by the landing gear actually. Aim for an approach speed of about between 90 and 100 knots. Not 190, that might be a little bit over the top. trying to avoid jockeying the throttles about too much. So that's probably quite bad for the engines. A little bit slow, so I'm going to have to push some power in now. Fairly short runway at Jersey, or at least it was for the Dash 8, but I suspect we're going to be okay in this aeroplane. Starts to float a little bit as we come over the land. A bit more nose up trim. Start reducing the throttles now quite a lot. All the way to idle now. Down she goes. Brakes are really not very good, but thankfully the landing speed is so slow that it doesn't really matter. I've missed that taxiway, so we'll go for the next one. Remember to raise the RPM to prevent the engines from stalling. I'm going to open up the oil shutters to help with the cooling now. Almost done. If we can make it back to the terminal without having an engine failure, then I'll call it a successful flight. Scenery, by the way, that I've got here for Jersey is UK 2000's Microsoft Flight Simulator Jersey. Big fan of UK 2000's airports for P3D, so I thought it was worth checking it out for Microsoft Flight Simulator as well, and so far it's looking pretty good. It's been quite a while since I was on the ground at Jersey, but it's pretty much as I remember it. All temps are still behaving themselves. See how much the pressure's dropped now the temperature's come up. We'll go next to this Xbox liveried A320 here. Stand number 8 looks just perfect. Ah yes, the twice daily BAE Hawk flight to the mainland, a real staple of Jersey air traffic. Oh no, guidance out of service. Well, who needs that anyway? We'll just guess. That'll do. Parking brake set. Set ground idle. And just let it sit for a little while. Okay, that should be long enough. I'm going to idle the throttles now and idle the mixtures. And we are shut down. Okay, let's get the wheel chocks in. Pull up the stairs. Get the door open. Yeah, you can see that we've actually used quite a lot of oil again. My bad. I think I've just it's just from me using the wrong grade of oil, resulted in us being too low on oil temperatures all the way. Offload our baggage as well. And there we go. Beautiful. So as our little virtual ground crew team offloads our aeroplane, I suppose I should come to some kind of conclusion about this this aircraft. Now, first of all, when I first started flying this thing, I've got to say it was pretty frustrating. It is a very complicated airplane. It does take a bit of time to get used to, and as you saw by that flight, I'm definitely not an expert on operating it yet. This is after about sort of 2 and a bit days of practice. So yes, you are probably in for a bit of a rough ride, especially at first. I would recommend, if you can't get the engines going by any means, go into the root files in app data and delete the panel state saving data, because sometimes that seems to be able to kind of soft lock you out of being able to start the engines. But other than that, I'd say it's an enormously rewarding airplane to fly. Once you've actually got it started and into the air, it's a lot of fun. It's beautifully stable. It really does feel like a big, or relatively big, obviously, not quite as big as that, but relatively large, heavy, old-fashioned, stable, comfortable aeroplane that's just kind of, it's not going to try and snap on you, it's not going to try and bite you. It flies incredibly well at low air speeds. So it's a joy to fly, basically, and it handles just like I'd imagine the real one used to handle, or still does, if there's any of them still flying anywhere in the world. Obviously the main draw of it is the depth of the systems modelling. It's incredibly detailed. Once you've got your head around it, it's very rewarding to be able to manage these engines for a whole flight and get on the ground without lighting yourself on fire or destroying the engine into lots of small metallic parts. So, is it worth 16 quid? Yeah, absolutely it's worth 16 quid. It's like I said in the air, I think this is one of the best value add-ons for Microsoft Flight Simulator. Yeah, sure, the textures aren't the best thing we've ever seen in this sim. I mean, it kind of looks a bit like a P3D add-on, really, inside for the most part, although the panel is pretty good. Outside is much better, but it's not kind of like Carenado or the default Asobo aeroplanes or PMDG or so on and so forth. It's not that kind of super hyper realism that we've sort of gotten used to seeing from this simulator. But it's still great looking. It smokes as well. The noises outside are brilliant. I guess one of the downsides of the inside is the noises. So yeah, textures and the interior sounds aren't too great. And there's the odd tiny bug, I guess, with the engines not kind of soft locking you out from starting them. But other than that, it's absolutely worth £16. Now, I'm going to say that with a proviso that this runs a completely custom engine management system inside the sim. Now, that's fantastic, but generally, the more complicated an add-on, the more easy it is to be broken by sim updates. So I'm going to say, as per Sim Update 9, this is a brilliant aeroplane and absolutely worth every penny. However, I would do your research if you're looking into this aeroplane several sim updates down the line, because there could be a load of bugs and things that have come up over time caused by the constantly changing state of Microsoft Flight Simulator. So do your research before buying it, would be my advice. So not turn the mags off. That's very remiss of me. Pop that up as well. So yes, do your research before you buy, but certainly as of Sim Update 9, this gets my big stamp of cat approval. 2 thumbs up, whatever you want to score it as. 10 balls of yarn out of 10, I don't know. But as always, you form your own opinions and let me know in the comments below. Please, regardless of whether it's positive or negative, we always like to see feedback. If you want to join us on Discord and give us free stuff, then by all means, the link is in the description below. And I will see you all next time. Thank you. Bye-bye.